when you tell me that you feel too much, that you are overwhelmed by tides of emotion that others seem not to notice. I hear not weakness, but the whisper of a destiny that is uniquely yours. To feel deeply is to stand at the threshold of the unconscious, that vast ocean in which the gods themselves once walked among men in the form of symbols and myths. Yet to feel too much can also become a burden, a curse that crushes you beneath its weight, because the very channels that open you to transcendence also expose you to chaos. I have met many who come to me not because they are ill in the medical sense, but because their souls are swollen with impressions they cannot contain. They dream too vividly. They ache too profoundly. They grieve for sorrows that are not theirs. And they tremble at shadows that others dismiss as illusions. They are not sick, but they are unprepared for the intensity of psychic life. They wander like seers without temples, prophets without a tribe, visionaries without a language. The truth is chilling because it demands a recognition. To feel too much is to be drawn into the orbit of archetypal reality. When the ordinary person walks down the street, they see faces, stones, lamps, the banality of objects. When the one who feels too much walks down the same street, the unconscious flares up behind the veil. Each passerby becomes a mystery. Each shadow, an omen. Each object, a vessel charged with numinous presence. What for others is simply life becomes for you a stage on which unseen dramas are enacted. And you are pulled into the tension of opposites. You are both the actor and the witness, the victim and the interpreter. Let us not deceive ourselves. This capacity does not come free of cost. Those who feel too much risk being possessed by the very forces they are gifted to perceive. The archetypes, those primordial images of the collective unconscious, do not merely whisper, they roar, they seize, they overwhelm. To be overly attuned to them is to live perpetually at the edge of madness. It is why so many sensitives retreat into isolation, or numb themselves with distractions, or collapse under the flood of psychic material without the container of consciousness. The unconscious pours in like floodwaters, and the house of the self is drowned. But what is madness if not the eruption of myth into personal life? A man who sees visions that others cannot see is not necessarily insane. He may be standing closer to the gods than society can tolerate. Yet, if he cannot translate these visions into the language of his time, he becomes alienated, dismissed, even destroyed. History is littered with martyrs of sensitivity, souls who felt too much and could not bear it, artists who drank themselves to death, prophets who were stoned, women accused of witchcraft for the fire that burned in their eyes. Do you recognize yourself here? Do you feel the trembling of your own soul in these words? Then understand, to feel too much is not merely a personal quirk, it is an initiation. You are being invited into a confrontation with the unconscious, and whether you like it or not, this confrontation is the path of individuation. The world needs you to walk it, though the world will not thank you for it. Consider the dream. In it, the unconscious reveals itself in images that bypass reason. A river swells until it floods the town. A child appears, fragile, yet luminous. A shadow figure stalks you in silence. These are not random hallucinations. They are revelations of psychic truth. When you feel too much in waking life, It is as if the dream has bled into the day. You live half in the dream world, half in the so-called real world, and this is intolerable for the ego. The ego cries out for stability, but the soul demands depth. The ancients knew this. They built temples, rituals, myths to contain the numinous. When they felt too much, they called it the voice of the gods and found ways to honor it. In our modern age, we have dismissed the gods, and so those who feel too much carry the burden alone, without ritual, without myth, without guidance. You must therefore become your own temple, your own priest, your own myth maker. Without this, you will drown. I tell you, the chilling truth: to feel too much is to carry the wound of humanity's forgotten soul. You are haunted not only by your own grief, but by the grief of generations. You are pierced not only by your own joy, but by the archetypal joy of the eternal child. When you weep without cause, it may be that you are weeping for the unlived lives of your ancestors. When you tremble with terror in the night, it may be that you are standing at the threshold of the collective shadow, feeling the weight of the violence, cruelty, and repression that mankind has buried. You cannot escape this gift, nor should you wish to, but you must learn to bear it, to shape it, to give it meaning. Otherwise, you will be devoured by it. This is the meaning of shadow work. Those who feel too much are closest to the shadow because they cannot blind themselves to it. You must turn toward it, face it, name it, lest it possess you in silence. When you rage without knowing why, when you collapse in despair that seems disproportionate, when you fall in love with an intensity that burns you alive, recognize you are wrestling not only with yourself, but with archetypes: lover, destroyer, savior, victim. You are not weak. You are in the grip of forces larger than yourself, and your task, your sacred labor, is to integrate them, to bring them into dialogue with the ego, so that you may live not as their slave, but as their vessel. Yes, to feel too much is frightening, but would you prefer the alternative: to feel nothing, to live in the gray wasteland of numbness, to be deaf to the whisper of the soul? No, the world is full of such numbness, and it is killing us. Better to tremble at the gates of mystery than to sleepwalk through life. Therefore I tell you, your sensitivity is not your downfall, but your initiation. You are being called into the depths. You are being asked to become the bridge between the unconscious and the conscious, between the ancient and the modern, between the individual and the collective. This is no small task, but you were born for it. Do not despise your tears. Do not scorn your trembling. Do not flee from your dreams. They are the signs that the unconscious is alive in you. And though the truth is chilling, that you are exposed, rough, vulnerable, it is also liberating. For it means you are alive at a depth that most will never touch. To speak of feeling too much is to speak of possession, though not in the crude sense of demons inhabiting the body, but in the subtle sense of psychic images overtaking the ego. Imagine that you are seated quietly, and suddenly grief rises up in you as though a black tide had poured into your chest. You do not know its source, and yet it is real, more real than anything your eyes can see. This is possession by the archetype of sorrow. You are not merely sad, you are carrying an image that has moved through countless centuries, the mourning of mothers who lost their children to war, the lament of exiles driven from their homelands, the tears of abandoned lovers. To feel too much is to be chosen as the vessel of these eternal experiences. It is unbearable if you imagine that you must resolve it with logic, but if you learn to stand within it, to observe it as one watches a storm on the horizon, you may begin to see its symbolic face. The storm of sorrow may reveal itself as the dark mother, the primordial goddess who both devours and gives birth. She comes not to annihilate you, but to awaken you to the depth of human experience. In her shadow, and you see not only your own fragility, but the unbroken chain of suffering that binds all humanity. And in this recognition, compassion is born, not sentimentality, not pity, but the fierce compassion that arises when you know that what is in you is in all. When you feel too much joy, you are likewise in the grip of the archetypal child, the pur eternus, the eternal youth. He dances within you, intoxicated with possibility, radiant with innocence. You are lifted beyond reason, intoxicated, perhaps even reckless. But if you mistake him for your own ego's possession, you will collapse when his flight ends, as it always must. To feel too much joy is to stand at the edge of ecstasy, and to survive it, you must anchor yourself. Lest you chase pleasure into self-destruction, here lies the paradox. The one who feels too much is closer to wholeness than the one who feels too little. For wholeness is not numbness, but the union of opposites. Yet closeness to wholeness means closeness also to chaos. You cannot escape it. You can only learn to hold the tension between joy and sorrow, light and shadow, life and death, until something greater emerges from their union. This is why individuation is not the pursuit of comfort, but of integration. When you come to me and say, I cannot endure these feelings, they are too great for me, I tell you, you're right. They are too great for your ego alone, but they are not too great for the self, that mysterious totality of being that includes both conscious and unconscious. Your task is to shift your identification from ego to self, to know that these floods of feeling are not yours to carry as a small, separate I, but that they belong to the larger pattern of your soul's unfolding. I remember a patient who dreamed of a vast cathedral filled with shadows. She walked through it, trembling, unable to speak, overwhelmed by the silence that pressed against her ears. Each shadow seemed to move, yet when she turned, no one was there. She awoke in terror, saying, I feel too much, I cannot bear it. But I told her, the cathedral is your soul, and the shadows are your unlived selves. You tremble because you stand before the immensity of what you are. You are not being destroyed, you are being invited. And in time, she learned to enter that cathedral, not as a frightened child, but as a pilgrim. So it is with you. When you feel too much, you are walking through your own cathedral. You may not yet have lit the candles. You may not yet know the prayers, but the architecture is already there. It is vast, it is dark, and it is holy. To flee it is to abandon your own soul, to remain in it. Trembling is to begin the path of transformation. You ask, but how do I live in a world that does not understand? How do I work, eat, speak? When the tides of feeling rise and fall within me, you must become an alchemist. The alchemist did not flee from the raw matter. He took the blackened, chaotic material and subjected it to the fire until it revealed its hidden gold. So you too must subject your feelings to the fire of awareness, to the vessel of reflection, to the patience of time. Without this, you will drown. With it, you will create. Every poem, every work of art, every myth that has endured was born from someone who felt too much. Dante wandered through hell, not because he was numb, but because he was aflame with vision. Van Gogh painted suns that pulsed with unbearable light because he could not restrain the intensity of his sight. Christ himself sweated blood in the garden because he bore the agony of the world. To feel too much is to participate in this lineage, but you must make of it something more than suffering. You must shape it into form. Dreams are your allies here. For those who feel too much in waking life, the dream offers the hidden key. Do not dismiss your dreams as fantasies. They are the nightly messages of the unconscious, guiding you towards integration. The dream tells you what the flood of feeling cannot. It translates chaos into symbol, and symbol is the bridge between unconscious and conscious. If you feel grief without end, watch for the dream that shows you the funeral procession or the black river. If you feel ecstasy without anchor, watch for the dream of the soaring bird or the fragile child. The dream gives you the image, and in the image you find orientation. But beware, the dream does not flatter the ego. It will often confront you with images that terrify you, that humiliate you, that contradict your cherished self-image. This too is necessary, for to feel too much without insight is to be inflated, to mistake yourself for a god. And the unconscious will not tolerate such inflation. It will humble you. It will confront you with shadow until you bow before the greater totality, the shadow, yes? This is the heart of it. Those who feel too much are especially prone to encounter the shadow, for they cannot numb themselves against it, as others do. The shadow appears in dreams as the dark figure, the enemy, the outcast. In waking life, it erupts as rage, jealousy, shame. To integrate the shadow is to admit, I too am capable of cruelty, of selfishness, of violence. I too harbor darkness. This admission is unbearable for those who cling to purity, but it is the only path to wholeness. Without it, you remain fragmented, haunted, tormented by feelings that have no name. With it, you become solid, grounded, real. Do not misunderstand me. Integration does not mean indulgence. To admit the shadow does not mean to act out its impulses. It means to bring them into consciousness, to own them, so that they do not control you from the dark. The one who feels too much but refuses, the shadow becomes a victim, forever blaming the world for their pain. The one who feels too much and embraces the shadow becomes a warrior of the soul, capable of bearing light and darkness in equal measure. You may think this too grand, too mystical, but look at your life. Look at the moments when you felt too much. Did they not also reveal something hidden? Did they not show you truths you would rather not see? The person you loved with unbearable intensity, did they not also mirror your own unlived self? The grief that crushed you, did it not also awaken you to the fragility of existence? The fear that shook you, did it not also open your eyes to the power of forces beyond your control? To feel too much is to be initiated into the mysteries of the psyche. And like all initiations, it is painful. It strips you bare. It leaves you trembling. But if you endure it, if you allow it to reshape you, you emerge, not as the same person, but as one reborn. This is why so many myths speak of descent into the underworld. Inanna descends and is stripped of her garments. Orpheus descends and nearly loses himself. Christ descends into hell before rising. The descent is the path of those who feel too much, and the ascent, the return, comes only through surrender, through endurance, through transformation. Therefore, when you tell me you feel too much, I do not pity you, I honor you, for you stand at the threshold of mystery, and though it chills you, it also calls you. You may turn away, you may numb yourself, you may flee into distractions, but the call will not vanish. It will return again and again until you answer. And when you do answer, you will discover that your sensitivity is not merely for yourself, it is for the world, for through you, the unconscious speaks not only to you, but to all. Your tears are not only your tears, they are humanity's. Your joy is not only your joy, it is the archetypal joy of creation. Your terror is not only your terror, it is the terror of the species confronting the unknown. If you learn to give form to these feelings, to speak them, to create with them, you become a vessel through which the collective may heal. Yes, it is chilling to feel too much, but it is also sacred. It is a strange paradox that those who feel too much often appear weak in the eyes of society. And yet, in truth, they are among the strongest, for strength is not found in hardness or numbness, but in the capacity to endure intensity without shattering. The oak tree stands firm against the storm, but it is the willow, bending and swaying, that survives the flood. Those who feel too much are like the willow they bend. They tremble, they seem fragile, but through their very openness, they endure forces that would destroy others. And yet, let us not romanticize this condition, for sensitivity without wisdom leads to collapse. To be flooded by emotion without structure is not noble, it is destructive. It is like being struck by lightning without a grounding rod. The fire enters, but finds no path into the earth, and so it burns the vessel to ash. Thus, the one who feels too much must learn the discipline of inner work. Without it, the unconscious will overwhelm, and what could have become light will become only chaos. This is why I insist on the language of alchemy. The alchemists spoke of the prima materia, the raw, chaotic substance, black and formless. They did not discard it. They placed it in the vessel, subjected it to the fire, and waited for the transformation that turned lead into gold. Your overwhelming feelings are the prima materia. They are raw, heavy, often unbearable, but if you can hold them in the vessel of consciousness, neither repressing nor acting out, you will find that they change. Grief becomes compassion. Rage becomes clarity. Terror becomes awe. These are the gold that emerge from the blackness. But most people do not wait for the transformation. They seek escape. They flee into addictions, into endless distractions, into relationships that dull their intensity. They anesthetize themselves because they cannot bear the fire. And in doing so, they abandon their own potential. For the gold lies only on the other side of endurance. You must learn, therefore, to live in the fire without being consumed. This is the art of symbolic living. The unconscious speaks in images, in symbols, in myths. If you feel too much but cannot interpret these symbols, you remain their victim. If you learn to see their meaning, you become their interpreter, their priest, their bridge to the conscious world. Take, for instance, the image of the flood. Many who feel too much dream of water rising oceans, rivers, storms. These are not random dreams. They are the psyche's way of showing you that the unconscious is surging, that emotions are overflowing. To see the water in dream is to know that you are not merely anxious or depressed. You are undergoing a visitation from the archetype of chaos. If you panic, you drown. If you recognize it, you may learn to swim. Or consider the image of fire. Some feel too much in the form of burning desire that consumes them, anger that sears, inspiration that will not let them sleep. They dream of houses burning, forests in flames. Again, this is not madness. It is the appearance of the archetypal fire, the transforming energy that destroys and creates. If you resist, it incinerates. If you understand, it purifies. But modern man has lost the language of symbol. He says, I had a strange dream, and dismisses it. He says, I feel anxious, and seeks only to numb the sensation. He does not realize that he is standing in the presence of the gods. For the gods have not vanished, they have become symptoms. What the ancients called Athena, we now call anxiety. What they called Dionysus, we now call mania. What they called Hades, we now call depression. To feel too much is to experience the gods without the temple. The ritual, the myth that gave them meaning, and this is why it feels unbearable. You must, therefore, rebuild the temple within. When you feel too much, ask yourself what God is present here, what archetype is moving through me. Do not reduce it to pathology. Elevate it to myth. If you rage, ask yourself whether Aries has entered your soul. If you weep, ask whether the Great Mother mourns through you. If you tremble with desire, ask whether Eros himself has lit his torch in your heart. When you see your feelings in this light, you no longer drown in them. You give them form, you honor them, you learn from them. But beware the danger of inflation. Those who feel too much often mistake their sensitivity for superiority. They say, I see what others cannot. I feel what others are too numb to feel. Therefore, I am chosen. This is a grave mistake, for inflation is the most dangerous of all psychic conditions. When the ego identifies with the archetype, it becomes swollen, believing itself divine. And the unconscious punishes this with ruthless cruelty. Those who inflate are always brought low through madness, through failure, through humiliation, until they learn humility. The truth is that to feel too much does not make you superior. It makes you responsible. You are responsible for translating what you feel into meaning, for giving form to what others cannot see, for carrying the burden without drowning. It is not a crown of glory, but a cross to bear. Only when you accept this responsibility with humility can your gift become fruitful. I recall another dream told to me by a man tormented by intensity of feeling. He dreamed he was carrying a blazing torch through a forest at night. The torch illuminated the trees, but it also threatened to burn the forest down. He was terrified. I told him, the torch is your gift. It gives light, but if you do not learn to carry it properly, it will destroy what you love. He wept because he recognized the truth. His passion had illuminated many, but it had also burned relationships, careers, and his own peace. To feel too much is to carry the torch. You must learn its weight, its danger, and its necessity. There is another danger, to projection. Those who feel too much often project their unconscious onto others. They fall in love with impossible intensity because they see in the other not the person but the archetype. They are enchanted by the image of the anima or animus, that inner figure of the soul, and they believe they have found their perfect counterpart, but it is not the other they love. It is their own unconscious reflected back at them. And when the illusion breaks, they collapse into despair, blaming the other or themselves or love itself. This cycle is common among sensitives. They move from ecstasy to devastation, from worship to hatred, because they cannot distinguish between projection and reality. The work then is to withdraw the projection, to see the other as they are, not as the archetype you have cast upon them. This is painful, for it requires admitting that your feelings, though real, are not infallible guides to truth. To feel too much does not mean you see clearly. It means you are flooded, and you must learn discernment. Yes, discernment. That is the word. To feel too much is not enough. You must learn to discern what belongs to you and what belongs to the collective. What is genuine vision and what is projection? What is a call to transformation and what is a temptation to inflation? Without discernment, sensitivity is a curse. With discernment, it becomes a path to wisdom, and wisdom is never cheap. It is born of suffering, of mistakes, of wounds. Those who feel too much often carry scars, for they have stumbled many times, trusted illusions, been deceived by their own emotions. But these scars are not signs of failure, they are signs of initiation. They show that you have wrestled with the unconscious and lived to tell the tale. So I say again, do not despise your sensitivity, but do not idolize it either. See it for what it is, a gateway into the depths, and know that gateways always demand a price. You must give up comfort, certainty, and sometimes even your sanity for a time, but in return you receive vision, depth, meaning you become a participant in the eternal drama of the soul. When you sit here, listening, perhaps trembling as I speak these words, you may feel as though I am describing your very life. That is no accident, for the archetypes are universal. They move through you, through me, through all of us. What you feel too much, another has felt before, and another will feel after. You are not alone in your intensity. You are part of the great river of human soul, and if you can accept this, perhaps the burden will become lighter, not because it is diminished, but because it is shared. To feel too much is finally to stand before the self, that hidden center of the psyche which is greater than the ego, greater than the personal unconscious, greater even than your own life story. The self is the axis around which your being turns, the totality that embraces both shadow and light, conscious and unconscious, personal and collective. When your emotions overwhelm you, it is often the self that is pressing upon you, demanding recognition. It is as though the God within is knocking on the door of your consciousness, and the knocking shakes your whole house. This is why I tell you that your suffering is sacred. Do not misunderstand me. This is not to glorify pain, nor to romanticize despair. But when you feel too much, when you are pierced by sorrow, burned by passion, flooded by visions, you are experiencing the nearness of the self. The task is not to flee, but to enter into dialogue. Ask, what is this emotion asking of me? What aspect of myself have I neglected that is now demanding to be lived? For feelings are not accidents, they are messages. They arise when something within you or within the collective is calling for attention. To live in this way is to live symbolically. It is to recognize that each feeling, no matter how unbearable, is also an image, a story, an archetypal incarnation. The grief you feel may be the descent of Persephone. The terror may be the dragon guarding treasure. The joy may be the child god dancing at creation's dawn. If you can see your feelings in this light, you no longer drown in them. You stand within them as a witness, a participant and a creator, but the path is narrow. For at every step there is the danger of being swallowed. Some who feel too much lose themselves entirely. They become hysterical, addicted, perpetually unstable, unable to distinguish their inner storms from outer reality. Others repress, harden, numb, until their gift turns to bitterness. Few are those who learn to carry the fire without being consumed, to swim in the flood without drowning, to walk through the shadow without losing the light. And yet, this is the path of individuation, the path to wholeness. It is not a path for the faint of heart. To undertake it is to agree to die and be reborn again and again. Each overwhelming feeling strips you of illusions, tears apart your self-image, demands that you descend into the underworld, and each descent, if endured, reveals a deeper truth, a wider consciousness, a more expansive self. In this way, your very sensitivity becomes the instrument of your transformation. Consider the myth of Christ. He does not ascend without first descending. He does not redeem without first suffering. He does not bring light without first bearing the weight of darkness. This is not a Christian truth alone. It is the archetypal pattern of transformation. Inanna descends into the underworld and is stripped of all power before she returns. Odin hangs upon the tree, pierced before he gains wisdom. Always the same pattern descent: death, transformation, rebirth. To feel too much is to be chosen for this pattern. Your suffering is the descent. Your endurance is the death of the old. Your insight is the transformation. And your new way of being is the rebirth. Do not expect this to happen once and for all. Life is not so simple. The pattern repeats because the unconscious is inexhaustible. Each time you think you have reached wholeness, another layer reveals itself, another descent beckons. This is why individuation is not a destination but a lifelong journey. To feel too much is to walk this path continually, always balancing on the edge between chaos and meaning, and yet there is a strange joy in it. For when you accept your calling, when you cease to curse your sensitivity and begin to honor it, you discover that your life is rich with meaning. Where others see only surfaces, you see depths. Where others live in monotony, you live in myth. Where others cling to comfort, you are initiated into mystery. It is not easy, but it is real. And reality, however painful, is always greater than illusion. Now you may ask, what is the purpose of all this? Why has life given me this burden of feeling too much? I tell you, because the world needs it. The modern world is sick with numbness, with disconnection, with the flatness of materialism. We have lost the gods, lost the rituals, lost the capacity for awe. In such a world, those who feel too much are the carriers of the lost fire. Through your sensitivity, the world remembers what it has forgotten, that we are not machines, but souls, not mere consumers, but beings standing in the presence of mystery. You are the reminder. Your tears remind us of grief we deny. Your joy reminds us of ecstasy we fear. Your trembling reminds us of awe we have buried. You carry what others cannot, and in carrying it, you call them back to their humanity. This is your gift. This is your service. It does not come without cost, but nothing sacred ever does. And so I say to you, do not seek to rid yourself of this gift. Seek to refine it. Build within yourself a temple strong enough to contain the gods. Learn the language of symbols so that your feelings become messages rather than burdens. Praktische discernment, so that you know when you are projecting and when you are perceiving. Embrace the shadow so that your light does not blind you. And above all, remain humble, remembering always that you are a vessel, not the source. If you do this, your life will not be easy, but it will be meaningful. You will become a mediator between worlds, a translator of the unconscious, a bearer of light in darkness. Others may not understand you, they may even mock you, but deep down they will sense that you carry something they have lost. And in time, your very being will become a symbol, a living testimony to the truth that to feel too much is not madness but initiation. Let me end with an image. Imagine yourself standing on the shore of a vast sea. The waves crash, the wind howls, the horizon stretches endlessly. This sea is the unconscious. Most people build small houses inland, safe from the tide. But your house is on the shore. The waves strike you. Sometimes they knock you down. Sometimes they drag you under. But over time, you learn to swim. You learn to ride the waves, to listen to their rhythm, to feel their power without fear. And one day, you realize that you are not merely surviving, you are dancing with the sea. You are in relationship with the depths, and in that relationship, you discover who you truly are. This is the destiny of those who feel too much, to be wounded, yes, to be shaken, yes, but also to be transformed and to transform the world by your very presence. For in you, the unconscious finds voice. In you, the gods return. In you, the soul remembers itself. And though it chills you, though it burns you, though it terrifies you, it is also the most profound gift you could ever receive. To feel too much is to be alive at the very heart of existence. And if you accept this with courage and humility, you will discover that what once felt like a curse is, in truth, the path to your own wholeness. So take up your burden, carry it with reverence, shape it into meaning, and walk forward, trembling but awake, into the mystery that is your life. For there is no other life you were meant to live.